All right, so excited for today's guest, Ms. Charlotte Hintz. She is head of people success at the Ausland Group and was connected to her through a dear friend, former colleague of mine, as somebody who's really making waves in the HR world and has a revolutionary and disruptive approach to her role in HR. So I'm excited to share kind of what that means. But
Disruptive, man.
yeah, disruptive, divergent.
Alrighty.
But before we dig in, Charlotte, go ahead and please tell us anything else about yourself that you'd like to add and a little bit about your background and what you guys do at the Ausland Group.
Yeah, so I've been in HR for about 16 years. I've kind of broken some silos. So I took about a year as head of safety as well with the Port of Corpus Christi. But I basically broke ground in the oil field per se. It was definitely a sink or swim type mentality, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. So basically, yeah, 16 years of HR with a broad spectrum of hire to fire to, everything in between. So here at Ausland Group, it was a really good fit because it was both an engineering architectural firm, and then we still had construction. So I still kind of felt a little bit at home with my blue collar type roots. Definitely, again, disruptive. I wasn't going to make anyone cry with my HR approach. So
Okay, fantastic. And yeah, one thing that really struck me when we connected and kind of got to know each other a little bit, it really stuck out at me was your willingness to dig in and lead from the front. I find that to be rare in general in leadership, rarer than it should be, at least in my opinion. And so that kind of really motivated me. I'd love to hear kind of you share a little bit more about that and tell us about your why, like what drives you to have that type of proactive approach to your role and serving your team.
it's more of a why not. Quite honestly, I mean, I think that's where HR really gets a bad rap because we've been kind of stuck in this personnel bubble. This is where you're supposed to be. You're just your data entry. Stay in your little hole per se. I really kind of took a different approach to it because I like people, well, most people. But I really do tend to, it's the whole joke of, you could talk to a wall,
Mm,
so you can always find something in common with even your biggest enemy,
mm,
so I just kind of took that approach of why not be the person that I want to work with? And again, at Orion Drilling, it was my first real approach to HR. And it was great because I didn't quote unquote have a mentor. So I didn't pick up bad habits. I didn't have any bad habits, or people were like, oh, well, I knew an HR person who did it this way. It was be a friend, be a business, colleague, and let's just get it done together. So yeah, it was kind of like I said. I'm not a Toby by any means. So I'm not a stuffed shirt. So it's why not? Why not treat people with respect? Why not work together?
yeah, maybe I love that. I think it's beautiful. I wish more people had that mindset. And I think somewhere deep down, I think we all do. It's just you get kind of focused on this is what I was told to do, and this is what made me successful. And a book that I've read that comes up is like, yeah, but what got us here won't get us there. It's time to take a different approach, even
Exactly.
if those are things that benefited you in the past. And maybe share a little bit more like what that meant in your world when you say like lead from the front and dig in and get your hands dirty and like all that willingness. Like, can you share with us a little bit about what roles you were taking on while you were traditionally HR, but what you were actually spending your time doing?
Yeah, so a lot of it again got my hands dirty. It was getting to know what everybody did in the company, and again, I was trying to break down silos. It was I was having massive turnover. Well, I was having massive turnover because myself as HR wasn't involved in the hiring process. It was operations. It was you got a strong back, let's get it, let's get the job done. So I started taking in a different approach. I'm like, I need to have more of, the character questions. Yeah, I want to know
Mm-hmm.
who's working for my company and will they stay and are they the people I want here, working with us while we're growing. I mean, we were going tenfold. I mean, we went from 40, I mean, from, yeah, 48 people to 850 in about an 8 years time. So it was massive growth. And so when I started kind of, again, I did it to myself, and I know I got involved with more of the recruiting, and I would say no. And men would throw fits. The man down the hall gave me the job. I don't care if the man down the hall gave you the job. This woman right here is telling you no. So thank you, but try again later, you know? Um, so we started seeing less turnover, you know? We started having a lot of incidents, and I was taking on workers' comp at that time. So again, I was like, why are we having all these incidents? So it was, let's onboard with safety up front. You know, let's do incident investigation and get both HR, operations, and then add safety. So it's not just safety doing it; it's add ops and say in HR, and it really took a great approach to it. So we were actually able to all hear different things of why the incident occurred. You know, we all have different, you know, viewpoints, and all of a sudden our TIR, our incident rates went down. Ultimately, we were hurting less people, and I was having less conversations with wives, you know, because who, you know, don't exactly want to mess with a roughneck's wife by any means. So yeah, so again, got my hands dirty, got in it, and ultimately I got to learn what the whole company did. And I wasn't just, oh well, here's my little hole, here's my magnifying glass, this is mine. And so it was a lot of fun. So
Yeah, I'm interested to ask kind of a follow-up to that, and I'll share where kind of my brain goes with a similar thing. I stepped into a team and, leading a new division and 3 different departments in the division, and quickly noticed that there was essentially zero understanding between the departments of what everybody did. Like they knew each other, they were friendly, but they had no idea what the roles were or how they could work together better, whether they were working well together. And so I put in kind of a shadowing program and started a team call and like really helped educate them. And that alone, it was a process, to get everybody up to speed. I didn't want to derail their day-to-day work. But that alone, all of them in every department came forward and said, I love my job so much more. And I love the people I work with more. Like now I know how much they're doing, and it was sales. So it was everybody was incentivized, from sales development to the account management to the client services team. They all had the same common goals, even from a compensation standpoint. So they were doing it thinking, well, that's what I get paid for. But once they were doing it out of relationships with each other and really understanding how to make something a win for the client, you've initiated the relationship, you're going to build it, you're going to maintain it. Clients started having more favorable feedback. The team had more favorable feedback. They said they've never been happier in their role. I'm interested if you have some of that similar feedback or any stories you can share with us about feedback you got from your teams.
It's definitely, again, building those relationships, right? It's actually knocking down silos because, so, we all have our payroll person, and I don't know about you, but whenever I want to make sure that person's the happiest person, right? Because I like to get paid. And
get them on your good side.
Exactly. So what, my payroll clerk would always go, they never get their time in. They're, but I mean, it's a constant battle. And I was like, well, have you reached out besides just complaining? Have you set those deadlines, set those expectations? And so when we would bring everybody in and have like a team huddle, like we called them crew engagements, right? So we were bringing on all of, the crew, in-house. And I had her be a speaker. And everybody was ops and safety. And I was like, I need my accounting department to come in. And they're like, well, it's accounting. What are they going to do? She needs to be the face. And she's the person you say thank you to when you get paid. But this is also the face on the other end of the line that it's asking for that time, So I kind of brought that to the forefront of why we need to be one team. And I didn't make her a voice. I didn't put her as just the name on the email or the nagging phone call. It was, this is who she is, and this is why it's important. And man, after that, and we got payroll in time, everybody, she wasn't having to really pull teeth out.
So it really does improve job satisfaction and just make people be able to do their job more efficiently. I think most people want to do their jobs really efficiently. It's just sometimes we get caught up in the noise of everything going on in a company. kind of shifting gears a little bit, what do you wish more people understood about the role of HR overall, and specifically in regards to benefit strategy as well?
With in HR, it's like what I was saying was it's the cradle to grave. Well, hopefully not literally. It really is. HR is just so vast. So when someone's like, "Oh, I'm in HR," you're like, "Oh, okay, great. Here's this job," and they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I do this,"
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was lucky enough to be part of a growing organization that I had to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
So benefits is very complex, and the reason why benefits is very complex is because it really has to depend on who our customers are, right? Our customers are our people, and where are they in life? Are we blue collar? Are we white collar? Do we have a primarily female or male population, younger, older? So all these demographics really kind of come into play when you're really shopping for benefits. I don't know if I could cuss, but
Sure, go for it.
so I always have like a high deductible plan, and I call it my oh shit plan, right? Primarily, it was because we had all these high deductible plans, and no one was taking insurance. And I was like, hey, majority of our workforce are young men. They just need insurance of, oh shit, I fell off my motorcycle. Oh shit, I fell off a mountain. Oh shit,
Right.
I got in a car accident. That's what they needed. They didn't need what, say, the C-suite of all these older gentlemen, needed to make sure that they had their, medications with copay. So, like I said, you just have to have a fluid mix of what's going to fit, because ultimately it's a benefit, right? You don't want to be offering stuff that, oh, well, 50% of our workforce isn't either going to be able to afford, or they don't want this benefit. So then what's the point, right? And so, but yeah, so I would say look at the demographics, look at the plans that you offer, and again, make one at least a no shit plan, so.
Yeah, I mean, interesting. You said like, what's the point? Because that's something I really want to hammer home to everybody listening, and especially business leaders. I think the point is people want to invest in their people and provide benefits because they want to attract good talent and retain talent. That's one of the biggest expenses, not to mention healthcare being one of your biggest expenses. So that combination is really powerful. However, what you said really struck me. Like, a lot of people can't afford it or don't want it. So what do you think is is there anything that comes to mind that's kind of contributing to that disconnect of business owners who want to provide these amazing benefits and are investing a lot of money doing so, and then employees who are like, I don't want that, I don't need it, and I can't afford it if I did?
I think a lot of it has to do, again, with where the wages are on, say, certain people. You also have to look at, say, I hate to say it, but we have a lot of individuals who have to take child support, so when you're already paying, all this money, and then, but I mean, again, with the child support, a lot of the times it's mandatory that then they also have to elect the benefits. So in the oil field, we saw a lot of people who would have turnover right at that 3-month line, because that was just an extra $600 that they didn't want to have to pay for, ultimately a child that was their responsibility, So we did notice that trend as well, that it was, again, the cost. At Ausland Group, we actually pay towards the employee, spouse, family, and child benefits. So it's across the spectrum. It's, you have one cost for employee only. You have one single cost for employee only or employee child, because again, it's kind of like that one dependent each. And then we have one cost for employee family. So, but we pay a lot towards the employee family benefits. And Ausland Group was one of the, so far the only one that I know that I've worked for that actually pay towards more than just the employee.
Yeah, that's really big. That's a real testament to value that they place in your teams. In your opinion, whose role in an organization should it be to make the final decisions around benefit strategy? And then I've got some follow-up questions, but I'll leave it there first.
It really needs to be a threefold. Again, HR knows mainly the people. We're the ones who get the phone calls when little Johnny has cancer. We're the ones who find out that, our employees have diabetes, or, so we're the ones who are already involved in the employees' lives, before
Right.
all of a sudden they're really starting to, have these these insurance costs. You also need to get your finance or your CFO involved. It's all about the money. It's about the budget. What can you afford?
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's how
day,
businesses are run, by live and die by the P&L, and you have to take that into consideration.
You got to take that into consideration. I mean, as much as I'm like, insurance for everyone, you get a car, it just really can't happen without a true deep dive into what you can have. And finally, it needs to be the owner or the CEO, COO. Because ultimately, when they're like, yeah, we want to continue to pay 75%. And this was one conversation I had, our insurance costs went up. And he's like, I don't care, we're paying 75%. And I got him involved in the final, conversation, because I'm like, that's a $1.25 million increase, at 3%. That's for us to eat that 3%. That's what it's going to cost. And it was like, oh, let's just still do it, but it would have been a really different conversation if all of a sudden they're looking at the month-end budget and they're like, gee, Charlotte, where did all this money? And I'm like, hey, you said, and also if it's a family-owned business, I think when you put the owner involved in it, it really has a sense of pride, especially when they see employees, in the field or at Christmas parties or summer, whatever holiday events or Zoom calls, it's, you're really willing to state that I've invested in you as a person and not just as a asset on a, on a business spreadsheet. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's beautiful, that threefold approach. In your experience, which role typically is tasked with making that decision? Is it a threefold approach, or is it typically delegated to one particular role?
I would say, well, in my experience, I would say HR. Open enrollment's always HR. And then, getting people enrolled, et cetera. I mean, I don't exactly see my CFO or, payroll clerk going out, hey, let's all enroll you guys.
No.
So definitely it does lie on HR. And then when we, it also, with the payroll aspect, we update everything on the payroll lines, and then accounting ends up cutting the checks. But definitely, I think, because we know the people, we know what's going on. Yeah. And when we do these large claim, analysis, it's, oh yeah, I know exactly what happened here. I know who that was. And you're really able to put that story behind those large claims to really make it, again, more than just, oh man, look what Jose did, and I'm like, okay, but hey, this is what's going on. These are the stories. We're on a recovery. This was a one-off, so yeah, you're able to put a heart to it and not just a line, and, oh, that was a lot of money. And so.
Yeah. And so with that being said, that the HR typically is tasked with making the decision, I couldn't agree more, like the closest to the pulse of the people, that's the role of HR. And they tend to have huge hearts for the people that they serve. And I've had such wonderful experiences with HR. However, I've noticed, due to my own health struggles, I have a pretty solid working knowledge of healthcare, and then eventually got licensed and have a little bit more education behind it. And what was interesting is I felt like I had a very solid working knowledge for an average person prior to joining the insurance and business. And then I was like, I know nothing. You come in and you're drinking through the fire hose, and like, wow. Which then made me kind of go back to, if HR is responsible with that decision, and depending on the organization size and the culture and everything, HR roles may or may not have P&L level visibility, commonly don't in larger companies, unless they're very high up. But then also, can they really be expected to be experts in benefit strategy in the insurance landscape? landscape. I feel like it's almost like you're forcing HR to drink through a fire hose to make really sound business decisions around this strategy.
But again, it's also, I again, with the first question, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, it was, how can I sell insurance to my population if I didn't understand it myself?
Right.
I've let everybody know that, I used to have an 850, person company. Now I'm like 55. And it's still kind of the same approach of, hey, let me know when something's going on, and you normally do, because people don't show up to work, or they don't show up to work 100%. And that's also that conversation to my leadership. Let me know what's going on in my employees' lives, because I can send out the employee assistance program. I can so we have a gentleman right now who has cancer. And right off the bat, I sat there and I was like, I'm going to get a claims adjuster right on this case. Before the claim even got to our plan, I had already called them up. I had a claims adjuster and someone specifically for him to help him through this process. And again, unfortunately, I might be, abnormal in my sense of HR and my viewpoint of people, but that's how I would want to be treated. I would want someone to be looking out for me, because if I didn't know anything about insurance, I'd hate to go through this blindly. Even it's like I had a guy who kid broke the leg. Hey, you know what? Let's go ahead before you pay all those bills. Let's take it through. We'll take it through a claims adjuster. If things need to be recoded, they could be recoded and it could save you money. So insurance companies have a lot of tools and resources that not a lot of people take advantage of, and unfortunately it's because not a lot of HR people know that they have these resources and they could tap into it. So I'm lucky. I have, again, just like my labor law attorneys are my best friends. I have quite a few of insurance, individuals who are my best friends, and I kind of get to know what they do and their little tricks and trades, and I utilize that to help my workforce. So, because to me, if I can get their mind back in the game and off of medical cost and off of this what if, infinity cycle that we're going through, then hey, that's going to be best. So,
yeah, I think it's really beautiful, Charlotte. Like you have a true passion for servant leadership. I think most people, I don't want to say most people, because again, like HR tends to be the most empathetic people that I see. And I've never really seen somebody in HR who doesn't have a passion for serving people. But a lot of people just don't have the energy. You got other things going on in your life. Like you're very high energy, very fun, like my kind of people, and just don't have the energy to be like, oh, I'm going to learn the whole insurance landscape and benefits landscape so I can better serve my team. Like they may want to, and they may even bring that to leadership and say, we need to do this. And leadership puts it back on them. And they're like, well, I've got my hands full. I'm already doing everything I can to support the people. So I really like that, tying that back to your threefold approach of engaging people who do have P&L level responsibility and who are at the head of the company, what I call the heartbeat of the company, the CEO. Like it is your job to have your finger on the pulse of the culture and the job satisfaction and how people feel about working for you. And yes, that comes from HR, but there's nothing like experiencing it yourself. And I think you're telling the story beautifully about everything that you do. You dig in and lead from the front and develop it. Where do you think if there's a disconnect, because we kind of talked about it's usually tasked with HR, it should be threefold, do you have any suggestions for that disconnect and maybe how to start taking a different approach, knowing that everybody has a million things on their plate? Any kind of easy suggestions of how to improve your knowledge of this landscape or different solutions that exist to learn more about it?
So again, I think most of us have probably wound up in the hospital or at least a minor emergency center for that matter, right? But it's really one of those things that, we always say we want to learn something new, at least one thing every day.
Yeah.
Right? So to me, benefits, because it was really just heavy on HR. That's one thing I wanted to do. But again, when it comes to now developing a culture, and when you're supposed to be having your C-suite or your executives all talk about culture this and culture that, and our people are our biggest assets, then that's when you ask them, like, do you know our people? Do you know what they're going through, you know, because, and I was extremely lucky to have, you know, a CEO at Orion who he honestly cared about his people. It was one of those things that he would always say, we don't pay you enough to get hurt, so don't do it. You know,
Yeah.
we don't pay you enough. This is just a job. You know, it's, yes, we have a job to do, but it's not worth your health, right? And anytime I would come to him and say, hey, I have an employee, he's up in Pennsylvania. You know, we always have this, we have everybody who has signed in, I'm physically and mentally fit for duty, right? My guys knew something was off, you know, frontline supervisor. Hey, what's going on? He had an infant died. And so, but he knew he needed this job to pay for the bills that just, you know, just racked up. And B, I mean, I sat there, I called a timeout. I said, you're going home. I said, you're going home because there's a wife at home who needs you more than your team on the job site. So we paid him the full 2 weeks, like, you know, because, you know, rotational, they don't get exactly vacation. I paid him actually 4 weeks because I paid him for the 2 weeks he was on, the 2 weeks he was off, and the 2 weeks he was supposed to be back on again. I said, you need this time off. I said, and your home life needs you right now, you know. So again, I was extremely lucky to already have a CEO who was so compassionate and so already on the pulse of, again, we're providing a benefit. We're providing what we call truly a family business. And we really wanted to keep it that way. So.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's part of like my mission is for this project is a call to treat people with empathy always, and put that first. And I'm taking it from personal experience, but I'm doing it through storytelling with beautiful stories like yours, where I've seen that translate to unbelievable results in terms of revenue and efficiency, like actually saving the company and making the company money by doing the right thing like that. So you might think, well, I'm going to pay this person for 2 weeks and they don't get vacation and that's 2 weeks pay. But what I find is like most people value loyalty and people who take care of them, and somebody who like is in that situation, a very stressful, horrific situation, and has a company that steps up and takes care of them the right way and doesn't worry about it, they come back and they do the best work of their lives, and like they contribute more to the team, and they're just in it and they want to come through and hit their goals.
It's a ripple effect as well, because, you know, and again, we didn't do it for the pat on the back. I did it because if I was a wife and I just lost a child, and I mean, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, hun, go to work, and I'm sitting here now alone, just depressed. I made sure that they had the employee assistance program. I kept, you know, I sent them, you know, meals on, you know, just one of those things that just, hey, here's some meals. It was, what can we do to, again, alleviate some of that? And the guy was pretty new employee. He was probably with us for six months or so. But again, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know? And it was, everybody on that rig was like, wow, we've never, because, you know, a lot of these people were from union companies or something else. I mean, it was again, just the right thing to do. And we would do it again. You know, it's just, again, why not? So.
Yeah, I wish more people had that approach to empathy. Just, hey, this is the right thing to do. Let's go for it because it's right. Now, but with that said, because and again, I think it's more awareness than lack of wanting to do the right thing, or just being kind of stuck in, you know, what I call like inside the box thinking, just not realizing how much power and control we have to make changes and do the right thing and do right by people. But with this approach, you know, you're like, I called you a disruptor or divergent, and, you know, taking kind of a revolutionary take. With that tends to come sometimes criticism. People who are making changes, like the haters, the haters come out. I'd love to know from you, kind of on an off cuff, if you've ever received an insult that you're actually proud of in your professional life.
I make grown men cry. No,
yes.
That actually happened. But no, I just wanted, it honestly was that I threw a fit to be at the table. And again, being the only female VP, I was like, why am I not at the table? You know? And so all these burly men were like, oh, well, Charlotte threw a fit. She's finally at the table. It was an insult because to me, it was like the only reason I threw a fit was because in their minds, because I was a woman. But if I was a man, A, I would have already been invited, and B, I would have been assertive.
Right.
I would have shown my place. So I mean, again, I did it tactfully, I did it justfully, and then all of a sudden they started realizing about how much the people really impacted their operations. They all knew they had people, but they all had problems. And it became just kind of this bitch fest. And then I was like, this is how you solve your problem. This is how you solve your problem. This is how you solve your problem. So yeah, I mean, I would say that them saying I threw a fit, I take pride in, because of the fact that, why not? Why wasn't I there? You damn right I'd throw a fit. I'm like, because ultimately it was my people who were being impacted, you know? So, but yeah, so that kind of
And you should be. You deserve to be at the table. Like, it is
yeah.
your role, your people, your title, everything. It's just, can't help it if men want to discredit you just for being female.
I really liked it when they're like, you make grown men cry. The guys at the rig sites actually made stickers that said, don't make me call Charlotte.
Go get him, girl.
They call me Puff Joint, which is actually the smallest but most useful tool on the rig site. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. But
awesome. What are some of the most exciting results? And this can be tangible, intangible in terms of like revenue type facing numbers, or, kind of the feel good stuff that comes from it. But what are some of the most exciting results you've seen come from willingness to change in organizations you've been a part of, whether that's changing culture or benefit strategy, or just kind of any major change that an organization may go through? I noticed there's a lot of resistance and fear because it's a process, and as humans, we're so fear resistant, we're so change resistant because of fears. But I'd love to hear from you, having this really proactive approach and just diving in and being all about change. What are some of the most exciting things you've seen come from that?
So, when I first started, HR, to me, HR was supposed to be the principal's office. It was like I always said, it was the FBI of a company. You have to play good cop, bad cop, but either way, no one likes hanging out with cops, right? So it took me a while to really kind of figure out that I could have multiple hats. I could gain friendships in the workplace, that wasn't just in my HR bubble, or they say the C-suite bubble. So, and again, it has to be the right individual who can also put on employee friend hat per se. But yeah, I think really kind of breaking down my walls as well as the walls of what HR is supposed to be, or supposed to be. On top of that,
she was doing air quotes for anybody listening. Supposed to be.
Supposed to be. Really kind of, again, I made a commitment to be part of the people and really try to lessen that Grand Canyon per se between us versus them, field versus office, C-suite versus, the rest of us. So it really was interesting when I made commitments and really tried to, again, make myself, now you have Brene Brown who's saying, be vulnerable, right? It really is hard to not be seen as a certain, I guess, level or a certain, perception, and break yourself down and say, I too am an employee. I too am, we the people and we the business. I think that's where HR also gets stuck, is that we're the people and we're the business. But yeah, I think being able to be vulnerable, it means a lot to we the people per se. And you're that person that now they could call. You're the person now that they can feel comfortable bringing up, that open door activity. Because I always say, if I don't know it's broke, I can't fix it, right? And then, usually, 90% of the time, people leave or you fire someone, and then you find something's broke and you're like, well, thanks, but now I can fix it, but you should have talked to me earlier type deal. But yeah, so the more I think I put myself out there, the more I got in return from my employees, and we truly built a great culture, and that goes for both Orion and at Ausland. When I started with Ausland, it was still kind of siloed, and I'm breaking them down. I'm here. What do we need? With operations, I'm like, hey, how can I help? They're like, what can you do to help? I'm like, hey, I'm more than just a pretty face. I'm like, I could do something. So yeah, I go out to the field. How are things going? And now I'm just, again, they feel comfortable talking HR stuff to me and knowing that I'm able to fix it. But at first when you read Brene Brown, you're like, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be seen, because again, vulnerability, you're thinking, weepy and, more like a Hallmark movie. And, but I don't, if that's not what it means, it's
Vulnerable,
really,
strong.
yeah, it is. It's comfortable in yourself and knowing who you are and knowing that you could fix someone's problems if they become vulnerable and
Right.
allow you to. So,
and creating the speed of trust to get them to that space. Like if you lead with vulnerability, and if you lead with vulnerability and meet people where they are, they will eventually meet you where you are. And then that's when the magic happens, when you have that trust, that vulnerability from both parties. And you're like, there's always a solution. There's always a solution to every problem. And that's kind of one thing I'm known for, is problem solving. That was kind of early in my career, always the feedback. And you and I we've shared kind of similar trajectories with digging in, dissecting, leading from the front, looking at every role. And there was like, you're an excellent problem solver. I'm like, well, there's infinite solutions to every problem that you're facing in life or in business, but it takes a different approach. Like to me, that's one of my kind of passions, is it takes a lot of empathy when you're willing to be vulnerable and understand what somebody else is going through and get them to kind of understand your limitations. For real, we all have them in business. Like some things, no matter how mad we want to do it, we can't do exactly what they're saying, but there's a middle ground. There's something better for both people. And it sounds like you really serve as that bridge. And I was hearing kind of that us versus them language. And what's always struck me as interesting about us versus them, because that happens a lot in business, it's just kind of normal. And we're kind of like, well, these people feel this way and these people feel that way. But the reality is, every single person in that dynamic considers themselves the us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you really look at it, it's all the us. And just whoever's against them is the them. But on the flip side, so it's almost kind of a silly thing, which is, if we're all the us, then why don't we work together?
Well, and that's where I have always told everybody, you can find one thing in common. So it's one of those things. Like I'd show up to to a work site with a Broncos hat, or and being from Texas, not everybody was a Broncos fan. Now up here, people are like, who's Texas Tech? Why are you wearing a hat? It's Ducks or Beavers. But when you show up with a rival, people like to then engage, and it breaks down the ice. And then on top of that, again, we may not have the same team in common, but we both like football. So again, that's one thing we have in common. And they're like, oh, and then it was like, well, is it football or soccer? And I'm like, okay, now we've gone off the beaten path. I'm like,
yeah, stop while you're ahead, okay?
Yeah. Like, don't make life too difficult for me. I can't solve every problem. I don't know why they call it football and soccer.
Well, since I asked you about the insult, I'd love to hear, Charlotte, what's the best compliment you've ever received in your professional life?
Oh, geez. I would have to say, most people, you can't, again, if you're watching this, you don't know how short I am. Right? And if you're listening to this, I sound very, huge.
Authoritarian, for sure.
I'll show up, or people finally see me, or I'll stand up, and people are like, man, you're short. But then comes the small and mighty. Or that's where the puff joint comes in, or small girl, big attitude. Again, that's empowering to me, because I literally look up to everybody, right? I mean, I'm like 5-0, so I literally look up to everybody. So yeah, I think that's usually the best compliment, is that they don't take, they look at my actions and not what I look like, or not how small and petite I am, per se. They admire my ability to really drive something. So.
Yeah, though she may be little, she's fierce. And really dynamic people can come in small packages.
I mean, even in high school, I had a guy who called me Tinkerbell. And I was like, what? And he's like, no, I mean, because you're small and you're like a little pixie that kicks everybody's butt. And I'm like, oh, Okay. I was like, I'll take
Well,
it.
you're speaking my language now. You know, my company is the Conscious Culture Fairy, and
Exactly.
it was born from calling myself Tinkerbell as a joke. When the consulting
Oh,
on Slack, we all use superhero names, and I use Tinkerbell. And usually people would announce their name, and then we'd guess who it was and figure it
yeah.
out. And I put Tinkerbell as the screensaver on Slack, and everybody starts pinging. They're like, "Oh gosh, Nikki, you do make people think they can fly. Yeah, you're always bringing the pixie dust." And I'm like barely over 5 feet and 100 pounds soaking wet. So there's like the tiny piece of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it
So
doesn't.
I had these like yellow sunglasses
Yeah.
in the 90s. And so yeah, that's where it's like, Tinkerbell. And I'm like, I'll take it.
Yeah, why not? And fairies are fun. They're mischievous and fun and good
Yeah.
energy. All right. So back to kind of some of the business questions. I'd love to hear if you have a favorite employee experience story or two, just anything you can share with the audience about employee experience, whether it's with culture, engaging with culture, benefit strategy, just some favorite things that you'd like to share that maybe exemplify that ability to kind of lead with a vulnerable and empathetic leadership team.
Yeah, I think the best one that comes to mind is so I was hiring for a front desk receptionist. And again, usually front desk receptionist comes under HR, you know.
Mhm.
So she was going to be pretty much my first, my first direct hire. And I was really kind of excited, and I had her as a reference. Someone said, "Hey, look at Michelle. I know she has no experience. She worked at Target." Um, and I had all these other applicants, people with years of experience, and either as front desk or HR, something kind of in between. Within that first conversation, I was like, I'm going to hire her. And, the C-suite's like, what are you talking about? She has no experience. It's like, she has a great attitude. She's dynamic. She has that true willingness to really learn, that self-drive. Needless to say, I employed her for about 9 years, 10 years. She went from not just my front desk receptionist, but she went, to, all the way up to my division HR, manager's position. I entrusted her so much that I actually sent her when we opened up a new division, and she was supposed to be taking control of the entire division. And just to show that you don't need a piece of paper or some credentials, she had that. And then, if you've read that Hiring for Attitude book, it really is amazing when you find someone with just some raw, good talent that you can tap into. And as much as it was kind of I was like, okay, guys, if she doesn't work out, oh well, we'll go with your pick. But right now, you're telling me I'm in charge. This is who I want. And so, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to be as successful doing what I needed to do as I climbed up and built a team, because she was the individual that I trusted the most. And she truly it was one of those things like that mind reading, she was just, I got it. And I'm like, I haven't even spit out words yet. She's like, I just get it. Okay. I was like, okay, good. Off to the side. And then I was able to do everything else I needed to do. But yeah, it's definitely hiring for attitude. Because on the flip side, I had an individual who had like 20 years of experience, and again in HR, and I didn't know bubble. This is again lesson learned on me. HR is extremely fast, and so yeah, she had 20 years experience, and as much as she had experience, she was extremely toxic to the environment, to the point that I couldn't have been on I had to work my entire maternity leave because I was putting out her fires that she was doing on on the forefront. But again, that's where you really look at hiring for attitude, hiring for aptitude. And again, that was just my backyard. Those were my team members, and it really kind of resonated with with that book when I was reading it. So.
Is there anything beyond that book? Because that sounds like a fantastic resource and suggestion that might help people who are trying to understand this approach. Because I think right now, like hiring the right talent is more pressing than ever with, the great resignation that we're facing and unemployment being like just recruiting the right people. It is a real challenge that I'm seeing a lot of businesses face right now. And it sounds like something that if I'm sensing this correctly, you're both intuitively gifted at, as well as have put, time and effort into developing that skill set. But I'd wonder if you have any resources you could share with, especially the HR people listening, about how they can develop more aptitude for that and start to move the needle, because people want to go to work, people are hiring, but there seems to just be a disconnect. We're not able to bridge the gap and find that right fit as often as we'd all like.
Yeah, actually, I don't have the author in front of me, but I could definitely send you. We were actually just going over that with my project managers 2 weeks ago, letting them know about this great resignation, or the tsunami, I think as Sherm was kind of calling it. Because, again, I think the last year and a half has really kind of shown some true colors in terms of where people lie, in terms of assets versus getting the job done. And I think a lot of companies, and I wouldn't say a lot, there have been a few companies that really didn't take this opportunity to really thrive at this. At Ausland Group, we did an amazing job at we continued with our culture engagement. We had our Fridays at 4. I personally made phone calls or team calls to people. How are things going? I know you're with your kid. How's school going? You need any resources? Which again was kind of taxing on me, because it wasn't just, HR and safety, day to day. It was, okay, how many times do I have to change this, this policy, new regs? What's this person up to? Okay, now we have an exposure. Now we have this. I mean, and it was extremely exhausting. And my little sister's working for a company in Denver, and she is fed up with the way that this company has been treating them, making them come in, but not enforcing the mask. How is she supposed to do her job? So again, some companies show true colors in terms. And I think with the onset of COVID, if people wanted to leave, they didn't know it wasn't the right time, because of the fact that there's so much change. This is the one constant thing they could kind of rely on. Right. So for the amount of people who've been wanting to leave the workforce the last year and a half, now I think that's where you're seeing this surge, because they're overstressed, they're overtaxed personally, and people have had to let people go. So more jobs been lying on them. So yeah, I think there's some great articles, and again, Nikki, I'll go ahead and I'll share them with you once I get the author's name and I don't mess it up, and the author me going.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I'll link it in the description and put it on the YouTube channel so that people can go. If you watch this on YouTube, you'll get all the links and can go directly to those resources that she's mentioning. Because I see this being such a pressing issue, and I know that the appetite's there. I sold to senior level HR leaders across America in my last role, and throughout COVID, and they were begging me. I've led teams remotely since 2004. So they were begging me for resources. How do we do this? How do we come through for our people? They're stressed. We're getting suicide threats. It was just so much thrown on HR's plate that they aren't wonderful, empathetic people, but they're not mental health clinicians and like senior level benefit strategists and remote virtual work experts. Like it was just, hey, HR solve all these problems. It was really that's where this idea was, the seeds were planted, not the whole idea was born, but that's where the seeds were planted, is that I found myself supposed to be doing sales calls. So I did end up losing my job because we weren't making a lot of the sales happen. Wellness program budgets had been cut for the most part, but developing these relationships with those HR contacts where we would both be crying on the Zoom and we would just brainstorm solutions. And because of my background being remote for so long, I already knew some like mental health wellness vendors, like stopgap issues, long-term solutions. So I was just kind of sending them, just trying to help solve problems. And they were so grateful, so grateful, and would follow up and say like the impact that it had made. That's kind of where the seeds of this project were, that there's so many solutions that exist today. It's just that there's been so much change on all of us in such a quick period of time. And obviously, a lot of people under pressure, you go into that siloed mindset. So, okay, well, my job is this, and I got to make this happen, because if I don't, then I take
control. I control this.
And even if you're trying to help, like, well, I don't want to have to fire anybody else, so let me control doing my job right. But my standpoint and opinion is step back and connect and really collaborate and engage and understand like where's that outside of the box solution that will work in our company that allows us to your point, thrive through this. Because people who change and adapt and are willing to do that and take the risk to do it earlier with risks is great. With big risk is huge reward.
So that was the thing, was that again, we took this opportunity to really kick up our culture and really have that connection. We already had a lot of the teams because we do have multiple different offices, but again, it's instead of having a Friday at 4 and kind of goof off with 2 screens while everyone's in the office, it's okay, everybody, here's our Friday at 4. Everyone has a Zoom call. Make yourself a beverage of choice. I'm not judging what's in that coffee cup. And again, it was
just put a lid on it. Nobody will know.
They're like, HR drinks. I was like, no, really?
No.
I'm not a nun. But yeah, so we really took the opportunity to really kick it up. We had very flexible schedules, knowing that individuals were going to have to also become teachers. And I'm lucky that I have to just do ABCs because my kids just started kinder, versus.
So you still have mastery over those topics?
I got the colors down really well. I got that. And I'm already still the smartest person, and HR doesn't do numbers, right? That's why we're people. We're not numbers people. And when I got 2 + 2 and all the way up to like 100, man, I was the smartest person in the room. So
congratulations.
I know. But no, in terms of culture, I think that's where you're also seeing that tsunami of resignation, because people are exhausted, and if you don't have empathy, and we've been individuals just been driving that bottom line, and another term I call is like, it's a give a shit factor. Once people know that you don't care, they're gonna walk, because you only have one life. So might as well do what you really love to do and be around the people who you like and you care about. And when that give a shit factor is gone, it's going to be really easy for an employee to walk. So that's where that care factor really kind of I always say touch, but then you're like, HR can't touch. So, you just need to sit there and make sure that it's like a touch and go, are you good? Okay, great. How can I help? What's going on? It is exhausting I think for us on the upper end, when we are trying to, again, have all those touch and goes and really have that listening. My biggest piece of advice is, especially for business owners or leaders or HR professionals, is that rocks can crumble, right? You could be a rock and everyone leans on you, but you're going to crumble as well. So you need to find someone that you can crumble along with. You need that, like you and I were talking earlier, that the cupping, the Russia, what is it? Right?
Reiki, energy healing, acupuncture, like all of these modalities, massage, self-care.
Except you need that, or honestly, put on the Hallmark Channel, get a bottle of wine, and all of a sudden watch a Christmas movie and enjoy.
Sounds heavenly.
Actually, this Christmas was the first Christmas I ever started watching Hallmark movies, and now I'm like, now I get it.
Oh yeah, where have you been, girl?
Watching all my true crime stuff, going, so yeah, and then So again, my biggest advice for HR people is that yes, this time has been tough. And when you decide, or when you are that individual that cares, like generally cares about people, you do feel like you're taking on all their pressure, and but yet again, as long as you find a person or a way to, again, crumble yourself and then build back up, no one's expecting you to really have the world, the world on your shoulders. So take a day for you, and, do something you love, pick up a hobby. I actually have stupid little video games on my phone. I just need to turn off my head. So yeah, that's some also good advice. And you can't, as much as if people have checked out, you can't make them want to stay. So
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. I mean, for twofold, really. One is you have to fill your own cup first. Like you put your seatbelt on in an airplane, you put your mask on first, and then help the people around you. And so, same thing. Like if you're really stressed, we're all wearing more hats and taking more on, and just living in the environment we're living in today. We're all stressed. We've all lost people. You know, it's a lot going on. So you got to fill your cup first so that you can give to others. And then on the flip side, you know, people who are maybe spouses and one has already lost their job and they're on a single family income and they're terrified of losing their job. So like, well, I don't want to ask for anything. It's a wonderful example to set. It goes back to that servant leadership. If leaders are taking the time to prioritize self-care and say, I'm out, I can't be contacted. If it's an emergency, go to this person. Like I am totally out prioritizing myself and doing the same for their people. It makes it more comfortable to either ask for it or even my true preference would be that leadership is demanding it, that's saying like, we're going to have a mental health day.
Nike, what, 2 weeks ago, gave their entire staff a whole
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
like, we feel it, you know.
Yep.
I mean, same thing. When we'll do a Friday at 4, and I'm like, okay, guys, it's not 4, it's 2, and then I'm like, HR says everyone leave, you know, and I'm like, who's gonna complain to me? But yeah, it's something that you just kind of have to do. I mean, again, we're people, we're not robots.
Yeah. Well, Charlotte, I always like to ask, since this whole project is centered around people and brands who are making a revolutionary difference in their field, what does being revolutionary mean to you?
Not waiting, doing. You know, I have a lot of people who say, well, you know, Charlotte, you're a doer. Because again, you know, you and I were just talking about fixing problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know it's like with my husband, I was like, he'll sit there and he'll give me a problem. I'm like, okay, this is how you're gonna fix it. He is a small business owner and he has 2 employees, and he's like, well, I didn't want you to solve my problem. I'm like, well, that's what I do. I'm the doer, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's not waiting around for someone else to do it. It's thinking outside the box. It's asking questions so you could get multiple viewpoints. And again, so you're not just in like this little pigeonholed. And ask for others to come along, you know, the journey, and make it fun. You know, I mean, like I said, I met Joel, you know, when I first moved here. And right off the bat, he's like, I'm going to like you. I'm like, I'm going to like you too. And it really, it's more fun when you have someone to come along your journey with, as well as other individuals who are like-minded and who you can bounce those ideas off of. But definitely, it's not waiting, it's doing. You know, it's not coming with multiple problems. It's finding solutions and making that solution happen. So that's to me what revolutionary is all about.
That's beautiful. We're so aligned in so many things. I mean, I honestly, I haven't announced or shared my website with people on the project yet, but it's really funny. Like you're talking about problems. Like I actually quote Vanilla Ice on there. Says, if you got a problem, yo, I'll solve it. And Joel brought it up. We were singing it. I'm like, it's true. Like the people that are in this movement tend to be really passionate about solving problems. And then my brand is centered on conscious collaboration between those people and brands, and like bringing that awareness and saying that together, what we can achieve just blows what any one of us individually could do out of the water. And so these people who are really passionate about big change, it requires big ideas, and those come from working together. So it's been a real privilege and honor for me to kind of enter the healthcare revolution and be connected to so many of the amazing people who are making strides there. And the other connection, it really does feel like a movement of people working together and really trying to drive positive change. And I've learned so much in such a quick period of time. And I'm so honored to have you with us today and to have learned from you, and really looking forward to keeping in touch and seeing how we can continue to elevate each other's missions.
Well, I mean, we're already BFFs, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm going to like you. All right. Well, Charlotte, is there anything else that I haven't asked that you wished I would have asked you today?
No, I think, you know, we kind of touched it on a lot. You know, it's a great conversation. Again, I mean, you get me. I
do.
Yeah. So, no, I think, you know, we kind of touched a little bit about everything. I mean, like I said, I was so privileged to be able to have an opportunity. You know, growing up in the oil field like I did, you know, just kind of made my position the way I wanted it. And here at Ausland, you know, kind of the same thing. You know, they're like most companies don't know what HR people do. And I think sometimes that's kind of a good thing because it's kind of like stay out of our way. We got
Mhm.
this, so if we need help, we'll let you know. No, so I really appreciate your time. So
Well, likewise, this was a true pleasure. So thank you so much for being on with us today, Charlotte. And again, we will link those resources on the YouTube channel. So if you're interested in hearing more about the resources that Charlotte shared, please check out there. It's the Conscious Culture Fairy. Charlotte, thanks so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
thanks. Have a great one.